properly, you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. It's the fourth in our spring sessions of webinar and last one. So I hope you've been able to join and enjoy also the previous ones. Today we'll be talking about matching climate services to climate targets, but also to non-climate targets and broader needs. And while we expect you to hopefully also participate in the discussion, you'll be mostly hearing from me, Stefka Domosova, and from my colleague Tantan Leis, again from Climate Geek. A little bit before we delve in, some housekeeping rules. I would invite you to keep your microphones off. If you have some questions, please ask them on the chat and we would address them. The recording and the slides would be available together with the recording and the slides from the previous webinars on the Protect website. And I invite you to already note or scan the access to Mentimeter. That is either the code or the QR code that you see on your screens. Otherwise, we would be sharing it throughout, so you may also access it there. But we would be using the two consistently throughout the call. Before talking more about today's topic, a little bit of background. So this may be slides some of you have already seen if they were also participating in the other webinars. Today we are gathered here in the context of Protect. Protect is a Horizon Europe project whose aim is to raise awareness and build capacity for the purpose of using pre-commercial procurement for purchasing climate services. The project itself is focused on five particular domains, which are these you can see: agriculture, forestry and other land use, civil security and protection, energy and utilities, marine and coastal, and sustainable urban communities. But we are always also looking for broader needs. And while we primarily focus these webinars at public procurers or other types of procurers, we are very much looking forward to hear the experience of all of you, independently of what is your exact experience with climate services or how much it is, as it is important for us, but also for Protect to scope the whole range of stakeholders. So please don't shy away from sharing your experience with us. As I mentioned earlier, we have two sessions. We have a spring session and an autumn session of these webinars. Today, we are in the last of the spring session of the webinars that are focusing in more general terms on innovation procurement and climate services. Today, we'll be talking more about climate services than innovation procurement, but of course, we would certainly share some honorable mentions of the latter. And in the autumn, you will be able to attend sessions focused on the five Protect application domains, which would mean that we will be talking about pre-commercial procurement and climate services in each of the five domains that you see on the screen and what we discussed a little bit earlier. So this is where we are today, the last of our five webinars. As I mentioned earlier, and as I will mention again, you should be able to find the materials. This is the recordings and the presentations of the previous webinars and of this one very soon on the Protect website. So have a look at that and stay tuned in for our autumn series. And a little bit about more content now we'll be talking about today is we will talk about why is it important to identify climate and non-climate needs and understand the market of climate services. We will talk about who and how should they be involved in defining the demand and optimizing the procurement of climate services. We were talking about how climate services can be used for objectives that are not necessarily climate ones. And then we will discuss a bit together about how we can formulate and structure the demand for climate services, or if we cannot, why we cannot, and what is missing and how to mend that. Well, without further ado, we will talk a little bit about what is the importance of identifying climate and non-climate needs and understanding the climate service market. First of all, I probably mentioned climate service 20-ish times by now, but what is a climate service? Well, there are different definitions. The one that is more or less agreed upon is the definition of the European Commission from the European Roadmap of Climate Services that you see on your screens. It's a definition that dates from 2015, but nothing has really changed since. And in very, very short terms, what is meant by climate service is any service that uses climate data to combine it with other data, which may be climate or non-climate data, into customized tools that should serve the society at large, and it could serve different purposes such as adaptation, mitigation, and risk management. So if I need to reduce even that, everything that uses climate data for a customized or customizable service for these purposes could be a climate service. So this is what we would be looking at. This still means nothing. Let's go to an example with this beautiful picture from the Netherlands and their very impressive Room for the River program, which is an excellent example for a climate service. You may or you may not know, but in the 90s, parts of the Netherlands suffered severe damage from flooding. And there have been a lot of talks for restructurations, and the Room for the River program started in 2007, and it was supposed to run for 15 years, and it included over 30 infrastructural projects, which revolved around, well, as the title of the program says, making more room for the river. They included none less than 4 new rivers in the Netherlands, and through creating water buffers, relocating levees, increasing the depth of side channels, and the construction of flood bypasses, they were able to make the territory more flood-proof. So you see that here, for instance, we are talking about climate service that had well, very clear climate drive, which was the drive for adaptation, and to a certain extent, maybe even mitigation of adaptation, at least of climate change. But at the same time, it's a climate service that was also very much involved with decisions that depended upon infrastructure and land planning. So this is a climate service. Just an example of what we have identified in Protect as climate services. We have created a taxonomy based on different taxonomies, and this is just for you to know what we are looking at. And we have subdomains in each of the 5 domains that I've mentioned a couple of times, and then we have list of services that are not presented on the slides. But this is just an orientation for what different climate services can be and when can they fall. And why is it important for you to have an idea of such taxonomies or of the climate market? Well, first of all, the climate market is not necessarily very, very mature. It's not yet by any means standardized, although there are projects looking into that, for instance, the Climate Europe 2 project. But it is important, very often taxonomies, although they have sometimes different definitions of what is climate service themselves. You could just use them as catalogs, if you wish, of climate services to see what is on the market. What if you can make use of the services that are already on the market, or if it's not already on the market, then maybe you need to either look for something that's not on the market. And in this case, well, in both cases, you may benefit from PCPs, which concern solutions that don't already exist. So not things that are off the shelves, not things that you already see in the taxonomies very much. And then sometimes it could also help you to think of what you're looking at, and to see if the reason that you cannot find it is the reason of what the market is not offering. So in the market offer, or if it's because maybe there are some defaults in the way you may be formulating your demand with respect to the market. Maybe it's time for a couple of Mentimeter questions before we go even further to test the ground. My colleague Beatrice would share her screen for a second.
Yes, so I've also shared in the chat the code again, so you can easily copy paste that into the link, or you can scan the QR code there. And I will now share my screen so we can see the Mentimeter. Yes. Okay. Yes, so if you go on menti.com and insert this code, you should be able to log in. And I'll also move to this slide so you also see the big QR code, and you can log in with that. Also go full screen so you can log in, and then once you're in, Yes, I see some thumbs ups. Means people are logging in. That's good. So I'll give you just a second to log in with that, and then we jump into the first icebreaker question, let's say, which will be a traffic light question, which new feature of Mentimeter turns out. So yes, people are still logging in. Just give me a couple more seconds, and then we can move to the question.
Taking the opportunity that Menti is waking up,
Yes.
just to reiterate what Stefka has been saying as well, there's really no good or bad position to be in to answer those questions. Actually, the good position to be in is the one you are in, whoever you are. So, so we're really, it's not just that we're interested to hear about people who have not engaged with climate services or people who are very much into climate services or anything in between, that it's actually essential that we have those different perspectives. Because as Stefka said, the way to unlock the potential of climate services is to engage people all around, across the spectrum, in defining the demand and meeting the supply together. So I try not to say it every time, but every question comes with whoever you are, please answer, and your answer is the right one.
Yes. So here's the little traffic light game, just to break the ice question. So do you think you currently know how to best leverage climate services for the benefit of your organization? And you can choose one of these lights. Again, no right or wrong answers, just to sort of see where we're standing as a group of participants. Okay, so someone sure does knows how to best leverage. Great. Looks like most of us here stay on the yellow, so like maybe halfway, about to start, not there yet. Great, same question. Answers are coming in. Perfect. Right, I think we have all the answers in. So definitely we have a winner for the yellow, work in progress. Any comment on that?
So I think from me, so the person who voted green, please come forward and tell us what we don't know. And I mean, I don't mean it ironically, because it's really good to have the experience of somebody who feel they have really the best leverage of climate services. I think the yellow is quite logical. The red is very interesting as well, because in fact there are many ways to get started there, and it would be, yeah, I don't think we have planned that, but it might be interesting to ask the question again in a following webinar. Because there may be some of us who will still be at red, because and then it would be important to know what are the barriers, in fact, what just blocks us from using climate services.
Great. Shall we take the next questions right now, or do you prefer to jump in with the rest of the presentation?
Let's go.
Let's go to the next question. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, also great. Didn't know we were going to be shown percentages. Amazing. So I don't have to calculate them myself. Yes. So jumping into the next question. Think of one need for which your organization has used or could use climate services. And once you think of that need, just type it down. Again, any answer is welcome, even maybe answers in which you're like unsure.
Don't overthink it. It doesn't need to be the best answer. It's really just one need. It's just to get into the mood. Okay, is it something for me?
Okay, so answers are coming in. Nice answers coming. Great. Illegal lodging of forests. Interesting. Quite a few answers about forests and water. We have seen that also in the past workshop we've held. A lot of the answers tend to verge around the area of water and forest energy. So good to see that these areas keep showing up. Let's see if someone else is still typing.
Maybe leave 30 more seconds and then.
Yeah.
Patricia, can you keep a record of the answers here, or
Yeah, absolutely.
we need
this
to
is
catch
all.
up? Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
this is all recorded on Mentis.
Yeah, it would
Stay
be
with us.
useful for the latest steps of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this may be all the answers we had. So interesting. Again, quite a few on deforestation, you know, also about energy related issues. Maybe, I don't know if someone feels like they want to maybe unmute themselves or like write into the chat, elaborate more. I think everyone is always free to do that. I'm just reminding you, this is an open conversation. So if there's anything you want to say loud, feel free to do so.
What I find very interesting, if I may, is that we have indeed quite some sectors, but although we have some also very cross-sectorial suggestions. For instance, the one on us assessing the actual climate impact of what we do. I mean, assuming that I don't know quite what is the person that what the person does that does that needs the climate impact to be assessed, but also, for instance, for procurement that and for green for making it more green. So I think it's interesting, and we'll talk about it in a few slides from now, I think, on how different needs can converge into climate services.
Great.
And talking about that, maybe we should jump into the next question after we have this very lovely pattern of needs, and maybe ask you what are the barriers and the challenges, or at least the first that comes to mind, that prevents you or your organization from actually using these climate services now as it stands.
Again, the question is open. Probably you need to refresh your page or click next question, and then you can type in the answer to whether your challenges for your organization. I see questions popping up slowly. I also wonder to which degree Menti is slow, because I know I submitted an answer that I don't see here yet. So I guess they will come up.
That's really interesting, because there are different understandings of the question, which is great. So to play transition costs, I'm quite intrigued about what that covers. It's yeah, there are things around accessing, understanding what there is to offer, cost factors, profit, and probably the choice if you can't buy them all. Behavioral change, I think it's an enabling condition, and that's really interesting also to for just I don't want to preempt a discussion, because that's really, but behavioral change, you could think that people need to have a will to change, to actually take an interest in using climate services, and in another way sometimes those services can be a help to support the change. So
more comments about costs popping up here. Definitely some questions about will this be very costly.
Okay.
Yes, I think this may be all the answers we're getting.
Yeah. No, so I think so. Please keep your
Mhm.
answers in mind because we will use them hopefully later in this session and really elaborate on that because I know it's a very nice range.
Yes. Should I share my screen now? Jumping into your presentation? Or
Yes, I think it's
like I'll give back the floor to you then.
Okay, I'll share my screen then. You should be able to see it now.
Yeah.
And now it's even the correct slide. So Tantam, the floor is yours.
okay. Well, I take back the mic. So that's a very broad question, of course, but as like I said at the beginning, we are taking it step by step. So climate services can be used either driven by really climate needs, climate objectives, or by non-climate needs. So it's of course arbitrary, as in general it's a gray zone. But let's start by talking about ones which are triggered by climate objectives or climate challenges. And in fact, the point is really to look at how far you need to go to take action. So there are some cases where you have a need personally, and you can be, a specific user, and you just need one particular service, and you will either procure it yourself or ask the procurement division to do it. But in many cases, you will have or you have had to reach out to other parts of your organization or to a number of other stakeholders, and take a few situations where you can be in. If you're in charge of the climate performance in your organization, very likely this performance is in the hands of multiple actors. If you're responsible for public procurement, you want to green it, then you need to understand what the needs could be across the organization and collect them and maybe make priorities. If you're leading a multi-stakeholder program which has climate-related objectives, then you want to build a complete view of your program's needs for climate services. So in all those cases, you have to reach out to a number of factors. That sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily what is done, and not so easy to do. So just to launch this reflection together, I take a couple of examples. So some of you will be very familiar with them because I actually took projects which are already a few years old. So there's been follow-ups, and of course it's progressed, but I thought those examples were still probably clear enough and still relevant. So the first one is it's almost a classic case by now. It's the integration of blue and green policies at city level or at district level. So about 10 years ago, even more than that, we started to support a pioneering innovation project, so Blue Green Dream, on nature-based solutions in urban contexts. And we had partners from the UK, from France, Germany, Netherlands. And one of its outcomes was a Blue-Green Solutions Guide, which you can find online. I can give you the link if you want. And of course, as I said, many developments have been happening after that, including a very interesting project across more than 15 European cities, which is called Act on NBS. So a challenge that was identified from the start was that many municipal administrations are siloed. Yes, I'm still there. So I remember there was an image rather simplistic, but quite telling, that the project lead was himself quite a colorful figure, light to use. So he said, in the same city at the same moment, you can very well have green roofs on fire and floods down the streets. So it's not incompatible. You can have both at the same moment. And even when the departments in charge of water management and of green spaces and infrastructures are fully aware of the threats from climate change, which is not always the case, generally their respective objectives are set independently. So they're using different metrics, they're monitored with different indicators. Often they are not using the same synchronized timelines. And of course, some of them are aware that there could be positive or negative interactions between blue and green infrastructures in terms of climate resilience. But to take actions coherently, they would probably have to deconstruct largely their respective action plans, their indicator sets, monitoring systems, even their financial planning and decision tools, and to reconstruct them together in more coupled ways. So that's a very tall order, and you don't do that from scratch usually. So what is explained in the Blue-Green Solutions Guide is that when nature-based solutions were at all adopted, in general, they were used in a monofunctional way. So for instance, you had one to provide shading, you had one to detain stormwater runoff, and in general, you valued each of those solutions only in terms of their benefits to the developer or to the principal stakeholder. So the challenge is both for retrofits and for new developments to enable the urban planning practice to realize the synergistic benefits of nature-based solutions. So I borrowed this diagram from the Blue-Green Solutions Guide because it's very simple and it hints at the diversity of urban components that a holistic systemic nature-based solution approach could address in support of a real blue-green strategy. So what you can see, those 12 elements, there are more of course, but those 12 components generally pertain to, I don't know, 5, 6, even more city administration units. And each of them could benefit from climate services for planning, for design, for execution, for performance monitoring. And those services should be selected, of course, and purchased and assembled in a way that enables the effective management of their synergies and their interdependencies, and not just the performance of each urban component in isolation. And while I'm saying that, I mean, I can hear myself saying, is it really happening like that? In most cases, no, right? I mean, the units are dealing with their part. There is a kind of master plan. But really, when you purchase climate services, do you really look at this this net of interdependencies? I think not. So this approach has been tested in a number of locations, and for instance, in Zagreb University on a new campus, it yielded overall energy savings of 68% for heating, 92% for cooling, 60% for electricity. And it helped, of course, mitigate extreme indoor temperatures by 4 to 6 Celsius degrees, both for extreme heat and extreme cold. In another city, well, not very far, in Shabbat, there was a wide public engagement. So somebody mentioned behavioral change. So that allowed to identify a range of city resources that had been left untapped in terms of a standard design process for nature-based solutions. And notably, they enabled the multifunctional use of irrigation canals that go across the city and its parks. And they delivered not just water, but areas for recreation, biodiversity, flood protection. Yet another example was in London with Marlow Road. So then there was an integrative approach to position the buildings and the trees and the design of building envelope shading. So the materialization and the stormwater management facilities were also integrated in this study. And so it yielded altogether a solar load reduction of 38%, which is quite big. The heat island effect reduction was roughly 33%. And again, you had outdoor microclimate reduction of 3.5 degrees Celsius in the summer. So I'm just taking this first example because I think it's still, of course, relevant, and there are still challenges like that. And it's really something where taking this holistic integrated approach of not just climate services, but including the climate services and designing this infrastructure really made a difference. So the next example, I'll be shorter on that and quicker. It's on climate resilience farming. So it's really started in the east of Africa. Then it's been disseminated to other parts of Africa, but there are active studies to see how much it could be transposed to more northern parts of the world, including some parts of Europe. So the initial point is the challenge faced by millions of farmers to increase the yield and the sustainability of their production, and also the longer-term soil conservation, while benefiting from a degree of protection against extreme climate events that so far had been very, completely inaccessible to them. So in fact, the situation is really where they they know and they're pressured more and more to have more sustainable practice. But in fact, they just struggle to get loans, very concretely from local banks for several years, because there's too much uncertainties, there's too much risk, and there's just so this is vicious circle, because of course if you don't do that, then you're going to exhaust the soil more quickly and you increase the vulnerability. So that was the topic of this project called Winners, and then it evolved into the ARISE set of programs. You have now other innovators in that space, like Descartes Underwriting. An oversimplified way to tell the story is that, as I said, the small farmers, farm owners in Africa had almost no access to climate information with a resolution that would be relevant to them. It was much too broad and much too, not fit for the size of their farms. The local microinsurance would never be capable of covering the extent of their climate risks, and the local banks could not provide investment with sufficient visibility over time. The coverage by larger companies would be completely unaffordable to them, and all this combined with this increasing pressure from international bodies, but also global consumers on the impact of land use on the environment. So a simple but quite innovative approach was to integrate those components, which ranged from finer climate information and modeling to elaborate insurance contract infrastructure from the small scale to the larger scale, and all this in support of an end-to-end supply chain approach that distributed the risk and the investment in better coherence with the robustness or vulnerability of all actors along the chain. So typically, the farmers were much more vulnerable than the final consumer or the distribution companies that imported and exported the food. So that's really an example where if you take this driver of climate impact, reducing climate vulnerability and impact, you have to bring in lots of actors that normally don't work together. And that's the way you make the chain, go above the flotation line, so to speak, and you know where to invest to make it viable for all. And it's actually working quite well. It's been disseminated to hundreds of thousands of farmers in the east of Africa, and then further to other parts of Africa. So we could go through many other examples, but as I said, the aim is not just to provide you with a kind of best practice to copy, but it's really to know what your actual aims are and your actual challenges are. So we would really be very keen to hear about your experiences of reaching across other parts of your organization or other stakeholder groups in your ecosystems. So I think that's where you have some more Menti questions from Beatrice.
Yes, so here are more Menti questions coming. So I can also see from the number of participants that we should be a couple more than we were 10 minutes ago. So if you just joined,
That's
welcome. Yes, and I invite you to look at the chat. That's where I shared the link on how you can access Menti and also the code. So you can join us in that way, because we have a couple more questions for you. Here they come. Okay, so this is where we left before. Sharing the screen, and you can refresh your page if you were still logged in, or you can log in again with this link and this number. And here is the new question. Name one department or unit or body, some type of entity that you have worked with to define shared climate objectives. So it's someone you have worked with, because we're interested to see which type of organizations, entities, or bodies you have worked with to define climate services, climate needs, yes, objectives.
You have a question? Sorry.
Also, just so you know, you will be shown maybe 3 options to insert 3 different entities. It's also fine if you cannot fill all 3. So if you only have worked with one, just feel free to write that one and then press submit.
So they don't need to be within your organization, of course. They can be, yeah.
So here we're seeing a word cloud, which means that the bigger the word, the more often this has been written by someone. So for example, we see cities, this is getting bigger. So maybe a couple of people have engaged with cities. HR, education institutions.
To give an idea, it may not be relevant, but it can be your procurement department. It can be your, city infrastructure department. It can be, any of those, so internal or external.
Yeah, so definitely we can see some of these answers are definitely external, unless some here is a firefighter, and then some internal. So
Yeah,
procurement colleagues, legal, exactly.
That's why I said it, because in some cases within your organization, to define your climate objectives, you have to talk with another division to say, okay, I think we should work on that, but what would be your priority where you would have climate challenges?
Nice. Let's see if some other questions are getting in. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question.
Yes, maybe 30 seconds.
Yes. We'll count down 10, 9. No, let's just see if we have a couple more answers now. Otherwise, we'll move to the next question, which is linked to this one. Okay, whoop, here it is. So, organizations, okay. Okay, so then we're moving to the next question, which is name, again, one department, body, you get it. Sort of the same question as before, but that you have not worked with. So maybe someone you're interested in working in that you think may resonate with their need. So which organization you have not worked with. Okay, so a few answers are coming in. And definitely I see that these are way more high level maybe than the answers we've had before. Before it was, like my colleagues or like the firefighter. Here we're talking about, international organizations and the ministry, transport as an entity. So international development banks, right? So definitely we see maybe we're lacking this type of connection with more high level institutions. Defense forces, recycling units. Nice.
It is quite logical that it's harder to come up with those but that's a game. So of course, all of those questions are just to get started into that. We're not going to come up with solutions within 20 minutes, but. Just 30 more seconds and then we can.
Yeah, and then we can move on. Yeah, this one, coastal restoration body, is the one that's maybe a bit more specific. I guess this is someone who maybe works specifically with coastal restoration, and then they wish they had more engagement with those bodies.
I suspect that one didn't come from Joseph.
All right, I think this may be over getting, unless we get a last minute entry. Then I'll give the word back to you for the presentation. Right.
Also, maybe indeed, if the person that put coastal restoration bodies wants to jump in and tell us how come they have such a concrete example of someone they should have worked with, but still someone they have not worked with, it would be very interesting, because I think that the other examples are more going a step further than what we usually do, and thinking a bit more abstractly of who would we involve. But seems that whomever put coastal restoration bodies, I assume, is someone that has already given it a thought. So if they want to share with us what was the challenge in collaborating with a specific unit or department, they're very welcome to step in. They're also very welcome to not to, if that's their comfort zone, but don't shy out to share your experience with others.
There'll be
Yeah, you can
another
also use
chance
the
in
chat.
10 minutes.
Exactly. All right, then I will stop sharing my screen and give the word back to you for the presentation.
Yeah, could I speak? Yeah, so
Yes. Please go ahead.
yeah, my name is Karthik, and I was the one who mentioned about the coastal restoration bodies and the recycling unit. So basically, due to the rise of sea levels and everything, the governments are thinking in that way, but they are not implementing anything with respect to India. I'm saying with respect to India, the state or the central governments are be looking into, they are making plans on the papers, but while execution phase, when they come in, there was not much of a things. And even though we are trying to push up from our ends as a student bodies or through other sources, in protecting coral reefs or say sea coming up towards the shore and these all sort of things. But that's where we, we were not able to tie up with the such or move on with those bodies. And other thing is the recycling unit. So we are using a lot of things in our daily lives, but the recycling factor is not so in a higher rate as we are consuming as per the consumption. So that's the thing. And even the solar sector where we are using the batteries and everything, the recycling of the other waste are also to be looked upon. But India is excessively using solar, but not thinking about the other consequences at the moment. So these are the basic areas where we are, we could have been improved, and we thought, yeah, those are my thoughts. So.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's really I think it's a challenge that is widely shared, as you said. So one of the things is what concretely how can we progress on formulating the demand and having a dialogue directly with market players without necessarily waiting for, let's say, the federal state to have very precise guidelines on how to approach them and organize this market, which is almost never happening. Definitely, I think I have to hold back give back the mic to you.
Right, back to me. I would give you a few more examples of climate services, more specifically those that have a lot to do with addressing not necessarily climate objectives. I hope that would sound a bit less abstract in a second. So the first example I would like to share is something that we are very much aware of. We're talking about the transition of coal regions into non-coal dependent regions. Here we have example of the Ruhr region in Germany, but it's not necessarily much different than what other coal, or should I say ex-coal regions have done in Europe and a little bit more globally. So what you can see is that for the rural regions, they have used data to assess the potential of renewable energy sources and solar power facilities. For instance, it's as you may know, close to mines that are close. It doesn't quite matter. There are a pile of basically rocks, which provide very, very favorable conditions. For instance, for wind farming, as when you're in height, you can get much more favorable conditions for farming the energy than what you would do if you have some obstacles such as cities, forests, or anyways when you're at sea level. So this is one very concrete example, but and also if we think about that, this has largely improved, for instance, in this case, Germany's path towards their overall climate goals. But it would probably be an exaggeration if I said that all of this was done with the goal of preventing or stopping climate change. Probably the main incentives were indeed economic goals. So this is very often the case, and we see it everywhere in Europe, from the Netherlands and Belgium, for instance, to Poland to a certain degrees, and then very often successful projects transition these sites into different sites. It could be, for instance, for recreations, for renewable energy, or for really anything else. Another example we have is a little bit more general. The example we had in mind initially was a bit more abstract, and it had to do with the upcoming Olympics next year, and the fact that it's a very big event, very big by the fact that it will be attended by probably, well, hundreds of thousands of people. And this involves a lot of thinking in terms of infrastructure, in terms of transport, in terms of facilitating their location and relocation around the venues. So, for instance, this is somewhere when climate services would be indispensable. And then when we started digging into that, we saw that there are already some studies done, for instance, how to make the Olympic Village more sustainable by implementing water cooling system rather than ACs. So this is expected to largely reduce the impact of the village itself. But then, it's Olympics is not a village, and it's probably not a bad idea that we think that climate is everywhere, and if we think that it's everywhere, there's always something climate to be addressed. So I know that we have gathered a lot of attention recently around some sports events and how sustainably they can be done, but this is nothing new. For instance, I think it was WWF that has been rating Olympics for at least 20 years, and to the Athens Olympics in 2004, they gave, on the scale from 0 to 5, I think they gave them 0.4. That's how they were ranking. So bear in mind that some things, well, I guess needs to be done, but they can also be done in a more sustainable manner, which does indeed make it a climate service. Another example, you may not be quite sure what this droning hard drive has to do with this beautiful landscape until you probably read the description. So the story goes that in 2011 there were quite prominent floods in Thailand. They were very localized, and it seems that at least 660,000 people lost their jobs, at least temporarily. However, this brought to a lot of collateral damage. There was the country infrastructure, and the whole country had a lot of things to deal with. However, coincidentally or not, there was at about 43% of whole hard drives used globally, including probably those that we're using as we speak, were produced in Thailand at the time. In a way, also because it was very close to where they were sourcing the raw material. So in a way, it was a short circuit until there. But then it means that once this very localized location is suffering some unfavorable effects from climate change or from else, it means that there's no any resistance of the supply chain. So this is something to keep in mind, for instance, and this is something that we have seen again very similarly and a bit less climate related, for instance, for what we saw with the market of solar panels, which is indeed produced and mostly raw materials are sourced in China, and then it is delivered from there. But we saw that this was quite affected during the COVID pandemic and the infrastructure consequences it had for China and its export. I think it may be the time to go back to the Mentimeter, but before that, I want to tell you that I hope I did not confuse you too much. It was just I want you to, if you have to retain one thing other than this lovely landscape, please let it be that climate services and climate are complex. So very often we talk about a systemic approach, we talk about cascading effects, but don't let that scare you, but instead maybe take it as an opportunity to think that there are different levers that could be pulled so that you can address an issue, or different solutions that you can undertake. And now maybe it's time for the Menti. Thank you.
Yes. I think I overtook your screen. Let me know if it's true. I didn't know you could actually step over someone else's screen. Nice. So here we are, and thank you also for the story about the flooded hard disks. That was quite interesting. And I think this sets the scene for the next question, that is, name a non-climate topic, something maybe as fun as flooded hard disks, maybe not so fun. Non-climate topic or challenge where you work with other departments, again, units or bodies, and where you should also take a climate perspective. So do you also have some example that maybe is less conventionally linked to climate that you would like to share? We're here to listen. Got one answer so far. Transportation. Yeah, okay. We have seen some answers about transportation before. So, okay. Procurement. Yes. Maybe interesting also to state maybe in the chat or in another comment which type of procurement, which goods. Data handling. Agriculture and land planning. Okay. Innovation, procurement, and procurement. Again, if someone feels brave to, unmute or maybe in the chat, right, which type of procurement, or even just anonymously here add a comment about which industry, that would be very interesting. Online ad industry, okay, interesting. I was not expecting that. Attracting relevant new economic actors to a region. Procurement, okay, of vehicle, construction, building, and IT hardware. Okay, thank you for specifying here. Interesting. So quite a lot of answers about procurement, which means that you're in the right place. you joined the right webinar. Okay, I think this may be all the answers we have for now. Do you have any comments?
So I think maybe if there are, that's already quite quite a few. So if there are no more answers to it, I think it's a perfect gateway to to the rest of the discussion. That in theory we have 4 minutes left. Well, at least we are available for a bit longer if participants wants to stay on. I think the point is really now how do you now that we all seem to agree that we have challenges where we could use climate information. Some of us have already some, most of us think we haven't made the best of that, or our organizations haven't, some haven't yet. And we know we need to engage with more people probably than the ones we are normally engaging with on those topics. So we may be working every day with some units, but never discussing, climate performance or how to support their climate, the general climate objectives. So all of those examples, the question is now, once you have that and you know that it's a real issue, so how do we proceed with that? So how do you formulate your demand? How do you identify the demand? Make sure that you have a general view of the needs for climate information in your organization or in your program, beyond the ones that you have to deal with directly, and so what do you feel you miss, etc. So I think that's really the point of the discussion now. We're not going to find the answers in the next 10 minutes, but really build on the examples and the answers you've been providing. If anybody wants to step in, so maybe we can just share those two Menti questions rather to set the scene. I mean, not necessarily to answer them immediately, but And then, yes, the best would be that anybody who wants to take the floor would, elaborate on what they would think they need to do next to just unlock the potential of climate services for their organization, their program. Do you want to share the questions, Beatrice? Just.
Yes, sorry, I was
No worries.
still on mute. Yes. I'll just get back there. Yes, because someone overtook my screen. Yes. Okay. And then the next question. Yes. So what are your organization's priority needs that could be addressed by climate services? Again, this is an open-ended question. Just feel free to answer about your specific need of your organization.
So I think we probably don't need to stay too long on that because some of the answers we got are about that, but I think it's an invitation to keep it beyond this webinar, keep thinking in the next few days and weeks. Okay, rather than a collection of specific needs that you have or another unit has, etc. If you bring that together, what would be the benefit of having a explicit discussion within your organization on the priority needs? Because somebody mentioned that there was a cost issue. One of the barriers is a cost, or you don't know where to start with. And in fact, the addition of individual needs is never going to solve this question. So it's really how you make this question an organizational level one, connecting the people who have identified needs for climate information, and you structure it in that way. So.
I don't know, since we're running out of time, if you want me to jump to the next questions, or you want to move on with talking, or you want to wait until all the questions flood in.
Yes.
Let me know.
No, I think it's achieving tangible results, energy costs. We can I think leave another 30 seconds to that and probably bring in the next question then. Yeah.
Also, the final question will be quite quick because we're just going to be asked to rank some elements.
And again, the idea is that for those who can stay now, then let's continue talking. But it's also for the others who need to leave, just to keep reflecting on those questions and reach out to us. Join the Protect community, obviously, on the site, and reach out to us with with their reflections on that, and then we can see what we can do with them together.
Yeah, then maybe I can also just show the next questions, just so we can pick people's brain right before maybe it's time that they leave. This maybe it's a quicker one. You can just very quickly rank answers. So I get it. It's been one long hour. Maybe you cannot think of more things, so it's easier like this. Just being able to rank these options. Here, when I don't know if you're scrolling through like a mobile device or online, but yeah, exactly. Okay, great, you're doing that. Yeah, there's a drop-down menu you can scroll from. You never know. Okay, so. Okay. Unsurprisingly, cost-effective is among one of the first ones, since we've mentioned that before, but interesting to see that tailored to needs is also at top. Okay, we have a tie with co-benefits. Scalability may be something that people seem not to be too interested in right now, but I guess this is something is an interest that grows later on once you are working more with climate services. I guess this is probably not the first element that one thinks of when considering using climate services, but that's also important. So definitely you can see that these answers, co-benefits, cost effectiveness, and collaboration opportunities are all sort of equally important. And definitely for now, clear winner is tailored to our needs, which makes sense. We have also, from the answers we've had before, we have seen that there's so many different fields climate services can be applied to. So there is really not a one service works for all.
If I may comment just on the first
Yeah.
point, and while people keep responding, and then if people have time, we can continue discussing. But the first point, tailored to need and context, I think that's key. That's something that comes very often, especially for adaptation and resilience, even more than for mitigation. And on the other hand, that's one of the core difficulties, because in fact, if you think that you're alone with your specific needs and contexts, and then you have to explore a market which is itself very, very scattered, that's a double difficulty. So I think one of the things we hope to support in Protect is to bring together procurers or organizations which want to increase their use of climate services and look at those similarities or partial similarities between the needs and contexts. And in fact, you build critical mass and you build a common language or common description of similar issues. And then that facilitates the dialogue with the market and the supply side in particular, because it sends a clearer signal to the market. And it allows the market to evolve its offer also in terms of those needs. It's just the difficulty you have as a procurer to find the right service for you is mirrored by the difficulty that suppliers have, the providers have to find the perfect client for them. So it's really key.
All right, I think this may be able to.
I think we're there, yes.
Yeah, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Ana Lucia, yes, you raise your hand.
No, thank you, Tam Tam. I just wanted to use this one. I think this one.
You just uploaded.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this nice webinar. Really interesting to see the feedback of all of you. Yeah.
Thank you. So does any of the other participants want to step in the next few minutes if you have time? And I think the question is really, okay, how would you see next steps on your side? So we can suggest ways to proceed with that, but I think what is important is that you, if you're a user or a procurer, you would say, well, how you feel now and what you think your next steps should be to progress on this procurement of climate services. Any of you, if you wish to take the floor.
Or maybe even if you wish to tell us which of the elements we discussed today could be the first step for you to take, could be involving other units, or maybe consider the solutions in their broader climate or not only climate context. Maybe with regards to the solutions to the issues that you pointed at the beginning, where you said that you could be using climate services or that you are using climate services.
And of course, as I said, you can, if you don't feel ready to step in now, in fact, just do contact us later on. But it's.
So I guess indeed, if you don't feel ready to step in now, don't hesitate to join the Protect community, as Tam Tam pointed earlier. And also there you could contact us, and then maybe we can work together to help you structure your demand for climate services and see how that feeds into, for instance, pre-commercial procurement. And I would also invite you to have these links in mind to follow to get the materials of the webinars that have passed, and to follow up with the webinars that would come in autumn on the specific domains that we will be talking about. And if there are no other questions, I would probably thank you all on my behalf, and I'll pass the word to Tam Tam, who may have something else to tell.
No, it's not. It's just thanking all the participants as well, and just emphasizing what we just give it a thought. I think that's the invitation I would send, because you may be in the situation where you really see potential in boosting the use of climate services, or boosting it quantitatively, or just focusing it better. And again, I think the more we know about your needs and the way you analyze your real challenges, and the better chance we have to cluster your needs with other procurers, maybe in Europe, and to work concretely with our colleagues in the consortium towards a pre-commercial procurement process. So you don't need to do that. It's just that we think that it can be useful to your needs, but you are the ones who can tell us more specifically what are your actual pain points, what are the things that you can't find by yourself by navigating this market right now. And that's why we actually presented some examples as an inspiration of what can be done or what links can be made, but also having those questions for yourself to narrow down a bit, where you really see value in collaborating, and then reach out to us whenever you feel ready for it. So. But don't wait until you have the perfect answers to reach out to us. I think that's a key message. So yes, so I would also thank you, Beatrice and Stefka for helping co-organizing this webinar, and again, so stay tuned for the webinars in the autumn, as Stefka said. But in the meantime, there are of course other activities happening in the project. So joining the community is the best way to be informed and to have your voice heard. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Then I think bye for now, and then see you for sure in the autumn for the next webinars, and hopefully even before that, feel free to reach out. Then we wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.